Welcome to the Joy of Sunflowers podcast. We release podcasts here, in part and in full, on the Joy of Sunflowers website. The Joy of Sunflowers podcast is about sisterhood through infertility and pregnancy loss. We cover a range of topics including fertility, pregnancy after loss, and so much more. I speak with a range of people, including wellness professionals, medical experts, and beautiful mamas. The aim of this podcast is to bring you information and experiences that will validate and equip you for whatever season you find yourself in right now. Hey Sharna, thank you so much for joining me on the Joy of Sunflowers and being here today and speaking with me and everyone. It's really great to have you. We've spoken before, which was awesome. So it's really nice to see you again. Yeah, I want to get into your story and everything and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for thank you for creating this too, like creating a space for everyone to come together, because there's so much missing from like the pregnancy loss space in terms of support and information and what's available and what's accessible. So, I really acknowledge you for putting this all together and creating it first and foremost.
I find it really hard to take all these like compliments. It's coming a lot and I'm just like, oh, thank you. I said to my husband, what do I say? And he said, thank you. And I'm like, okay, thank you. Silly.
Yeah. And it is. It's an amazing thing. Like it's not easy either to line everyone up and get everyone to come on and do it and just make it happen. So, you had this vision, like when, like you said, we spoke before, like from however long ago it was, like last year sometime.
Months and months.
You had this vision. Yeah. And it's finally come to life, like, and you've done, and it looks amazing. Like everything that you've been creating, it's amazing. So thank you.
It's been an emotional roller coaster.
I could imagine. Yeah. So my name is Sharna Southan. I am a pregnancy loss practitioner or pregnancy loss coach. I am also a lost mom, and I am a mom to a rainbow baby. I am also a business owner with my husband, and very much keep everything like that keeps me busy, my personal business and my business with him. So that's kind of me. But then essentially so I experienced a miscarriage. So out of that, I realized there wasn't enough support in the pregnancy loss space. And through my healing and recovery, I realized that I had something more to give. There was something inside of me that was bigger than me. It was, that I was struggling through my pain and my grief, but knowing that 1 in 4 pregnancies end in loss, there's more women out there that are experiencing the pain and the grief and the lack of certainty and direction and everything that I was experiencing. And there was nowhere to turn for that. No one to turn to help you through that. So that's where I knew my inner desire to do something bigger was, I guess my miscarriage was the catalyst for my, the change in my life, complete change in my life. There's never anything that was on the agenda, but then neither is loss. Like it's never anything that you would ever anticipate experiencing. So
yeah, it's like life happens.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wow, okay, great. And you learn all these things and this whole world gets opened up to you. And then before you know it, you're like starting a big event, or you're like starting an institution where you teach people, and it's like crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, your whole, like you said, life happens. So at any point, our life is always happening. Like it can either happen to us or it can happen for us. And essentially what I chose was, okay, like I've gone through this experience. At the beginning, I felt like I was being punished for it. But then I realized, no, this is an opportunity for me to grow and to create something, like create something that's going to transform other people's lives and empower other women through loss and educate them. And so that they know then that that's not the end of their story. So, because it can feel so consuming at the time. But, life does open up these opportunities. It's like a plot twist. Like you just got to, in the moment, go, okay, what am I going to do? Do I adapt and do I grow, or do I stay where I am?
Yeah, I think a lot of people get faced with that kind of decision making time, like where you go through something and then it's up to you what you're going to sort of do from there. And none of our lives look the way we thought they would. Like when you're a kid, you're like, I'm going to do this. And I mean, you dream of like princesses sometimes as well. I'm going to be a princess. Obviously, that's not going to happen for most of us. It happen for some people. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't have princesses. But most
exactly.
So yeah, life doesn't turn out how we think it will, and we can plan and yeah.
Yeah, my life is definitely not the way that I ever thought that it was going to look. It all started essentially when I was 19. Like my dad died when I was 19. Like that was never part of me growing up. Like I assumed that my parents were going to be old and grey and live a full life. But he was 40, 48. So I was like, how is that a full life? But in those moments, you're like, well, he packed so much into that. He chose, like he knew he was unwell, but so he chose at any point he was going to, value his life and pack more into it, more experiences, more love, more fun, whatever. So he would have lived a full life just in a shorter period of time. And, that was my first thing of like, just, you have to cherish every single day that you've got here on earth. Like shit happens, unfortunately, to us, but we can choose. We can choose at any given moment what that can mean to us. Like I said, that was my first sort of pivotal moment in my life where I was like, okay, I'm going to embrace what's happening. I'm going to embrace my life, the good and the bad. And then obviously we had our miscarriage. And then that was like another kick in the guts. Like I felt like, what have I done wrong? I've already experienced like heavy stuff in my life at a young age. Like, why did I go through this again? Why was I experiencing this grief and literally heartache and heartbreak? Like I honestly felt like my heart was broken. And it's a word that I feel like is just thrown around, but until you go through stuff like that, you're just like, no, like it's a thing. Like I actually felt like it was the first time my heart was literally broken. And I'm like, why am I going through this again? Like, what have I done wrong? I'm a good person. Why am I being punished? Am I being punished because I didn't want to have kids earlier on in life? Am I being punished because, I made comments or whatever, like through my growing up, through my teenage years, like of just random stuff? Like, am I being punished for what I said or did? I guess that's the way that we can get caught in our own head about kind of what happens to us in our life. And I think that's human. I feel like it's a human response to want to find that reason and have that answer to go, oh, that's why it happened. And with my loss, I never got an answer. I never got a reason. It was just, it happened. And I had to process it from that point. I had to come to that sort of place of acceptance of not having an answer, not having a reason, and then wanting to try again, not ever knowing why it went wrong the first time. But I think that's one of the hardest places to come from.
So with your loss, how did the process go? How early and sort of how did you end up passing or going through the end of that process?
Yeah, so it wasn't anything like the doctor had tried to prepare me for. We had been trying to conceive and saw like a fertility specialist, and he gave me some medication to take to obviously increase my chances, which I did, because I was like, I want to fall pregnant. I want this to happen. I want this to be my reality. I'll do anything to get to have that in my life. So that in itself didn't look like anything that I had anticipated from a young age, because in school you're kind of taught how to, well, if you have sex, you'll fall pregnant. And, it didn't happen like that for me. So, for 5 years I was questioning, is there something wrong with my body? I think about a month after I started the medication, I fell pregnant. And seeing that positive pregnancy test, like in my mind, I was like, oh, yes, I can finally, be a mom, and I can leave my job, and I can be at home and watch them grow and do all of the things, like in my mind, like do all of the things that I've wanted to do for that, like forever, like however long I'd been planning it in my head from such a young age. All of that was then flooding to me and going, yes, this is now my opportunity. I can do this. I can be this mom. I can be a mom, and I can do all the things that I want to do. And then seemingly everything was fine on the outside. Like there was no pain, no nothing. I was tired, but I thought that was just all sort of part and parcel of being pregnant. But we went to our ultrasound appointment, and they said, they were scanning for a while, and then they said those soul shattering words of, I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat. And in my mind, I was like, no, you've got to try again. Keep trying. It has to be like, do something else. So they did an internal ultrasound, and came back with the same. He said it again, and I was like, no, this is not happening. Like, I never knew about miscarriage before experiencing it, but it was my worst nightmare. In that moment, I was like, no, like, we've been trying for so long. Why is this happening? And I thought I was about 10 weeks along. The baby had stopped growing at 7. So they shuffled us off to the doctors, where the doctor confirmed what had happened. The doctor said to me, it'll be like a heavy period. It should be fine. Just go home. And like, your body will do what it needs to do. So she said also that it takes about 3 weeks for your body to realize that the pregnancy is non-viable. And I was at that 3-week mark. So when I came home, I was just then anticipating, like, every day, waiting for it to happen and not knowing what I was waiting for. Like, I didn't even know what to expect. Like, it was, what they tell you is so vague. And ended up, I think it was like the next day after we got home, I ended up spotting, and I was like, so is this it? Like, what do I do? And then I felt guilty for flushing the toilet, because then I was like, did I flush something? I don't even know, like, what I'm meant to do. Do I flush the toilet? Do I not? Like, and then I felt guilty for flushing the toilet. But then progressively it got worse. The bleeding got heavier. I started to experience pain, which then when I I ended up in hospital and they told me I was experiencing contractions. So for 2 days, I was at home experiencing contractions and taking Panadol, which was doing absolutely nothing for the pain. I was awake. I think I was awake the final night, through the whole entire night, just crying and contracting and crying and contracting. Like I didn't sleep. And then I was bleeding to the point where I couldn't stand up. I was passing out. So, because that happened like from a Friday to a Sunday, like over the weekend, there was no doctors, and I thought it was normal. We were Googling it. So my husband's like, oh, this could last, up to 10 days. And I was like, 10 days, I'll be dead. Like, if I keep bleeding this way, I'll be dead.
Yeah.
Like, this cannot keep going. So we didn't go to hospital because I didn't know that it was out of the ordinary, because I didn't know what to experience. And Google was telling me all these different things. So I was like, well, maybe it is the heavy bleeding, but this is like excessive. Then the Monday I went to the doctors and they called the ambulance straight away. And the hospital here is like 45 minutes away. So the ambulance took me up to the hospital. They gave me like morphine in the ambulance, like for the whole way up. And one of the ambulance officers said, why didn't you call sooner? And I was like, because I didn't know. I didn't know that this wasn't normal. I've never gone through this before. Where's my, gauge? Like, I don't know. So when I got to the hospital, they obviously had a look inside and said, you're contracting, you're actually, so they hooked me up to a morphine drip, I think, when I was there. I can't remember. We had a really beautiful nurse that was with us in the emergency department. She was kind of making not light of my experience, but making it a bit more like sort of fun, so that I wasn't so like attention on what was happening. Because my husband was with me. So my husband was like kind of joking with her, like just totally irrelevant, random jokes. Like, so I'd be like laughing and then I'd be in pain and then I'd be laughing and in pain. So it was kind of like, she was a really good energy to have there, because she held space for me and understood what I was going through, but then also was trying to bring a bit of lightness to it as well. But then they said that I had to have a D&C because my body wasn't going to stop contracting. Like, it was still trying to get rid of, I don't want to say rid of, but get out whatever was left. I don't even know what was there. I don't know. That's the thing. Like, there's still so much that I don't know about, even what they found when I went in for the D&C. But when I was going into the D&C, the nurse, just before I went into theatre, she said to me, a different nurse, and I'm like, I'm glad I didn't have her at all in the emergency department, because she said to me, she's like, oh, after tonight, after the D&C, you'll be fertile, so you can try again, like straight away. And I was like, are you serious? Like, I'm like drugged out on morphine anyway. So like, it kind of just was just like, I don't even know, like, what? And I just went, like, I don't even know what I said. But now I'm like, I'm like literally dumbfounded with how she, like, what had even possessed her to say what she did. Because then I was like, you do realize what I'm going in for. Just because they're going in and I'm going for this procedure doesn't mean that I'm recovered to try again. Like, I might be fertile, but there's no way that I'm actually going to be mentally prepared to go through that again. And I was just like, I'm so glad you weren't with me at all, like through any other part of me being here in the hospital. So she said her piece. I don't even know. In my mind, like looking back, it felt like 1 second that I was with her and she said that and then I was gone. But then I remember waking up in the recovery and I was by myself, like in a chair. I'm like, my husband wasn't there. I'm like, still sort of so numb from everything that I'd been through. And then they sent me home. I was like, all right, nothing. I was sent home with nothing. So yeah, it was a very, very traumatic experience. Like I remember ringing my mum saying I was going to die. Like I legitimately thought through that entire process that I was going to die. I was laying on the floor with my legs up in the air, trying to get, blood back to my head because I was just passing out all of the time. And I called mum and I said, I don't know how I can get through this. And I remember writing all of this down. It was pages and pages and pages of just stuff because I have always written like what's in my head out so that it's out on paper and it's out of my head and it's something that's tangible. Whether I want to read it or not, again, I don't have to. But what I did was I wrote it all out. I never read it again, but I took it to my therapist and I gave it to her to read. And I'm like, this is what's happened. This is why I'm here. And she read it. She took, I don't know how, I think it was like 10 or 15 pages of just my thoughts and what was going on and what I'd been through. And she just looked up at me and she goes, this is so traumatic. And I was just like, thank you, because I legitimately feared for my life, like through that. And it's not anything that I was prepared for at all at any point, even the contractions. I didn't know what it was. I've never been pregnant before. I didn't know that I was experiencing contractions. And I wasn't told that that could happen. So like we were Googling everything. My husband was Googling everything. And then, and it hurts me to think that he was witness that whole time as well. And he had to
It's okay. It's hard to speak about.
Yeah.
It's amazing how it comes up on you, isn't it?
Yep.
It hits you at a time where you're just like, what? I thought I was okay. I'm just talking.
It hurts me to know that it's what he experienced. Like it was what he saw and how he had to be there. And then he felt he had to be the person that had to be the strong one.
I really hope you enjoyed the first part of this podcast. If you'd like to listen to the rest, please visit thejoyofsunflowers.com. Please note that all speakers, including experts and professionals, express information, views, and opinions that should not be used to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any medical conditions. If you have a medical issue, please consult a qualified professional. Speakers voice their own views, opinions, and conclusions, and they may not reflect the views, opinions, and conclusions of other speakers. Ella Rose, The Joy of Sunflowers, and its sponsors may not endorse all or any of the views, opinions, or conclusions expressed.